Like, and make sure to engage in comments. Also share this video to your friends and story lovers, and click on the subscribe button on the screen to subscribe to Mortifex for more real horror stories like this. The first girl disappeared on a Friday night. Her name was Rachel Thompson. Tall, blonde, sophomore with a reputation for sneaking out after curfew. No one thought much of it at first. Maybe she went to a party, stayed the night somewhere, and forgot to tell her roommates. But then morning came, and her bed was still empty. By Sunday, the whispers started. Girls in Northgate Hall, the all-female dorm at Everly University, shared nervous glances in the hallways. Rumors spread fast. Someone said Rachel had a secret boyfriend off campus. Another claimed she had been failing her classes and ran away. But there was one rumor that crawled under Mia Carter's skin. One that made her stomach twist in knots. She stepped out of her room past midnight, one girl muttered in the communal bathroom. That's when it happens. Mia, brushing her teeth at the sink, slowed her movements. When what happens? The girl, Cassie, glanced around, then leaned in. Girls who leave their rooms alone at night, some of them don't come back. Mia frowned. That's ridiculous. Cassie shrugged. Maybe, but I heard it happen before, years ago. A girl named Olivia. They say she... The bathroom door creaked open, cutting her off. Another student walked in, and Cassie clammed up, quickly finishing her makeup. Mia watched her through the mirror, feeling unsettled. That night, she lay in bed, unable to sleep. Rachel's side of the room was empty, her things untouched. The air felt heavier, like something was watching. She checked the time, 2:47 a.m. Then she heard it, soft footsteps in the hallway. Mia froze, her breath shallow. The sound was faint, barely more than a whisper against the floorboards. But then came something else, a rustling, like fabric moving, and then a low guttural sound. It wasn't human. Mia's chest tightened. She turned toward the door, eyes wide, heart hammering. The hallway light seeped in through the cracks, casting a faint glow on the floor. A shadow passed by, long, stretched, wrong. Then silence. Mia stayed frozen for what felt like hours. Eventually, exhaustion took over, and she drifted into uneasy sleep. The next morning, she woke up to screaming. Another girl was missing. Mia barely left her room after that night. Every creak, every shadow stretching across the floor made her stomach churn. The girls in Northgate Hall were on edge, whispering about Rachel's disappearance, about the second girl, Alexis Ward, who vanished under the same eerie circumstances. No one had seen them leave. No one had heard them scream. It was like they had simply walked out into the dark and never existed. Mia wanted to believe it was some twisted coincidence, that maybe both girls had run away for some reason no one understood, but she couldn't ignore what she had seen, or what she thought she had seen. That figure, that shadow gliding past her door. Something was hunting them. The university tried to contain the panic. Security guards were stationed at the front entrance, and a strict curfew was put in place. But it didn't stop the fear from spreading. Girls packed their bags, transferring to different dorms or moving in with friends off campus. But for some of them, like Mia, there was nowhere else to go. By the third disappearance in less than 2 weeks, Northgate Hall felt like a prison. The night Mia heard her name being whispered, she nearly lost her mind. It was almost 3 a.m. She had been drifting in and out of sleep when she heard it, soft, distant, but unmistakable. Mia. Her blood turned to ice. The voice was so faint it could have been her imagination. But then it came again, clearer this time. Mia, please. Her fingers dug into the sheets. She knew that voice. Rachel. Her breath hitched. She sat up slowly, her pulse hammering against her ribs. She turned toward the door, the dim glow from the hallway seeping through the cracks. Help me. Mia's throat went dry. It wasn't possible. Rachel was gone, and even if somehow she wasn't, how had she gotten back in? The front doors were locked at night. No one could just walk in. Then she saw movement, a hand, thin, pale fingers curling around the door frame at the end of the hall. Mia's stomach clenched. The hand was trembling, the nails jagged and broken. Then slowly, a face peeked out. Rachel. But something was wrong. Her skin was gray, her lips cracked and peeling. Her eyes, once bright and full of life, were dull, clouded over, like she wasn't really seeing anything. Her hair hung in damp, tangled strands around her face, and the way she moved, jerky, unnatural, like her limbs weren't working right. "Mia," Rachel whispered. "Please." Mia's breath came in shallow gasps. Every part of her screamed to slam the door and hide under the covers, but she couldn't move. Rachel took a slow, shuffling step forward, then another. A low, raspy noise came from her throat. Mia finally found her voice. "Rachel." Rachel's lips stretched into something that was supposed to be a smile, but it wasn't right. It was too wide, too forced. "Come outside," she whispered. "I need help." Mia shook her head. No, you're not. You're not real." Rachel tilted her head, blinking slowly. "Don't you remember? You told me you'd help me that night. You said you'd come find me." Mia's chest tightened. "I never said that." Rachel took another step closer. "Mia, please." Mia's body trembled. If she didn't shut the door now, something terrible was going to happen. She knew it in her bones. She reached for the doorknob, and Rachel's expression changed. The sorrow drained from her face, replaced by something else, something hungry. Her eyes locked onto Mia's. Her lips curled back, revealing jagged, yellowing teeth. And then she lunged. Mia barely had time to react. She screamed, slamming the door shut just as Rachel's hand shot out. The force of it rattled the frame. "Mia," Rachel's voice snarled from the other side, no longer soft, no longer pleading. "Let me in." Mia braced herself against the door, heart hammering so hard she thought it might burst. She could hear Rachel breathing on the other side, ragged and furious. The doorknob twisted violently. "Let me in." The voice was deeper now, twisted, not Rachel's. Mia squeezed her eyes shut. "You're not real. You're not real." Silence. Then a single knock. Slow, rhythmic knock, knock, knock. Mia's entire body went rigid. Then the breathing stopped. The knocking stopped. Everything stopped. After a few minutes, she forced herself to move. She reached for the doorknob, her fingers trembling. She had to check. She had to know if it was really gone. She cracked the door open just a fraction, and the hallway was empty. But something was different. The light was flickering. The air smelled damp, like mildew and rotting wood. And scrawled across the wall, written in something dark and dripping, were the words, "She doesn't let go." Mia slammed the door shut, locking it. She backed away, her hands pressed against her mouth to keep from screaming. She didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next morning she heard the news. Another girl was missing, and this time they found something. Not a body, not a clue. A single, blood-stained shoe. Mia recognized it instantly. It belonged to Rachel. Mia couldn't breathe. The moment she saw Rachel's shoe on the news, it felt like the walls of her dorm room were caving in. Her mind raced, trying to make sense of it. Rachel had been here last night, or something that looked like Rachel, but now she was gone, completely. Mia knew what she had seen wasn't normal. It wasn't human. She had to get out of Northgate Hall. The problem was, no one else seemed to feel the same urgency. The university was doing everything to downplay the disappearances, calling them isolated incidents, and assuring everyone that local authorities were handling the situation. But Mia knew it was all bullshit. She wasn't the only one. By the end of the week, almost half the girls had packed up and left. The ones who stayed did so because they had nowhere else to go, or because they refused to believe in the stories. But every night, Mia heard the whispers, the creaks in the hallway, the shadows moving just outside her door. Something was still here, and it was waiting. By Friday night, only a handful of girls remained on the floor. Mia barely recognized the ones that were left. Everyone looked exhausted, drained, like the life was being sucked out of them bit by bit. That night, Mia told herself she wouldn't sleep. She locked her door, pushed her dresser against it, kept her phone clutched in her hand, flashlight on, ready for anything. But at some point, exhaustion took over. She didn't even realize she had drifted off until she woke up to the sound of her doorknob clicking. Mia's eyes snapped open. The room was dark. The air felt thick, suffocating. Another click. Her heart slammed against her ribs. The door was locked. She knew it was, but someone, was still trying to open it. Her breath came in shallow gasps. She wanted to grab her phone to call for help, but her body wouldn't move. Then, the knocking started. Slow, deliberate. Knock, knock, knock. Mia squeezed her eyes shut. It wasn't real. It wasn't real. Then came the voice. "Mia, let me in." Her stomach twisted. It was Rachel's voice, but it wasn't Rachel. Mia knew that now. "Please," the voice pleaded, softer this time. "It's cold out here." Mia clenched her fists. "Go away." Silence. Then, a low, gurgling laugh. "You can't ignore me forever," it whispered. A shadow passed under the door. The light flickered. The temperature in the room dropped so fast Mia could see her breath. Then, a scraping sound, like nails dragging across the wood. Mia's body locked up. She wanted to scream, to run, to do anything but sit there frozen in terror. But she couldn't move. Then, the sound stopped. For a moment, there was nothing. No whispers, no knocks, just silence. Mia exhaled shakily. Maybe it was over. And then, the door unlocked. Her stomach dropped. The lock, the one she had checked a dozen times before bed. It had just clicked open. She sat up, her pulse thundering in her ears. She stared at the handle, watching, waiting. Then the door creaked open, slow, inch by inch. Mia clapped a hand over her mouth. The hallway was dark. The overhead light was off, but something was standing there. Not Rachel, not human. It was her, the thing they whispered about, the ghost of Northgate Hall. She was tall, unnaturally so, her limbs thin and stretched like something pulled out of place. Her long, matted black hair clung to her face, wet and tangled. Her eyes, if they were eyes, were just empty, hollow pits. And her mouth, God, her mouth. It wasn't normal. It was too wide, too sharp, too hungry. She took a step inside. Mia whimpered, pressing herself against the wall. She couldn't breathe. She couldn't think. The thing cocked its head, studying her. Then it smiled. Mia felt something wet trickle down her leg. Then the lights flickered, and the thing moved. Too fast. 1 second it was at the doorway. The next, it was right in front of her. Mia screamed. The thing grabbed her, its fingers ice cold, sharp, digging into her skin. Its breath reeked of rot, of death, of something long buried. "You're mine," it rasped. Mia thrashed, kicking, clawing, trying to break free. And then the door slammed shut. Darkness, silence, and then nothing. The next morning, Mia's bed was empty. Her dresser was still pushed against the door. Her phone was on the floor, the flashlight still on. But Mia was gone. And the only thing left behind was a single blood-stained shoe. Click on the subscribe button on the screen to subscribe to Mortifex for more real and true stories like this.